You're listening to Sips of Sanity, your toolkit for emotional and intuitive intelligence, or what we like to call the dirty work. Let's do it.
Welcome, patrons. So we're on day 2. We've chosen self-esteem. We've chosen Nathaniel Branden's book, The Six Pillars of Self-Esteem,
Which you can look forward to in book club in 2024.
It is in book club. Yep, that's very true, Kelly. So what we're going to do in this show is we're going to go back and forth. So I've picked high self-esteem. I've given Kelly low self-esteem.
Haha. Not in real life.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw out one point where you can identify where you would have high self-esteem. This is why we're doing this, so you guys can sit there and go, oh God, that's me. So we want you to pay attention. If you're listening to this, you can yell it back out if you're in your car, if you're cooking dinner, and go, that's me, that's me. But what we want you to do is say, that's me. But we also want you to identify, that's me at work. That's me
At 7 years old. That's me in my marriage. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when Kelly says low self-esteem, this could be a really great game. When Kelly says what low self-esteem is for the opposite of my point, I want you guys to yell out where you have the low self-esteem, and we want you to identify that. Again, it could be, oh God, when I was in hockey and I was 5 years old, or in Mrs. So-and-so's class when I was in grade 10. And that stopped me from going into the course that I wanted to take in university.
Cool. Don't turn this into a drinking game.
No, we don't want you to drink. Tea, yes.
Okay.
No caffeine, though. But anyhow, what we want is for you guys to really get engaged in this. And to take your time. So if it means that you need to listen to this particular show more than once, or you
Patrons do that. They don't need coaching. Like let's give them credit.
Well, I was going to say too, though, Kelly, that they might want to do it all on their own first, and then they might want to record themselves doing it and listen to it, because for some of us that are really at that, this is my level of self-awareness sometimes really lags. Sometimes recording it and then going back and re-listening to it again allows them to add more to it. Mm-hmm. Or if they listen to it or give it to a partner or a friend, feedback can really help us as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, so high self-esteem people choose goals that are worthy of who they are. They want to pick something that has challenge in it so that their goal is fulfilling when they attain that goal. And when they do, because they've broken it down and given themselves a process to attain it, then it builds their self-esteem because they attained that particular goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another term that comes to mind is that it stretches you.
Perfect.
Because I think some people just like a challenge because it's their kind of like headbutt personality. But you're talking about a goal that actually stretches you to grow and learn. When you look at low self-esteem, we might not take on goals. Period. Mm-hmm. Our goals might be just day to day get by because we want to stay in a familiar routine. And we can call it a routine, we can call it a rut, but we're not challenging ourselves. We're not looking for something new that stretches our minds, our creativity, our imagination, our energy, our strength, right? Mm-hmm. We just want to do what we know we can survive and kind of maintain a reserve of energy and resources. We're afraid of too much output when we have low self-esteem.
Oh,
so we put out the least amount of output in order to still have a reserve.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
And then B, if we do have goals, they don't necessarily stretch us, or our goals might merge with someone else. So we might think that we have goals that we want to accomplish and do, but they are someone else's idea, someone else's dream, someone else's identity, and we start wrapping ourselves up in it, maybe chugging along thinking that we are productive, but it's not actually, like you said, fulfilling for us. Mm-hmm. It's not our kind of rewarding. And it's not a worthy goal of who we are. It's not to say it's not a worthy goal, period, right? There's lots of things worth doing and tackling for sure. But when we come down to what's at our core and what fills us up, it's a completely different approach for someone with low self-esteem.
That's wonderful.
Now, I'm going to throw in a third one with low self-esteem, because we did talk about the fact that there are some people who are extremely successful with very low self-esteem. They may go after big goals that stretch them to their absolute max, energy-wise and resource-wise. But what they're going after is an identity that's not really who they are for the sake of being perceived a certain way.
Right. Or for the money, or for something
That's my point, though.
Yeah.
Because money makes you perceive me a certain way.
Right.
Right? And so these goals that may by nature, again, be worthy, the intention with which they're going after them indicate very low self-esteem, because I'm just grasping at something that might make me feel better than I do now. But ultimately, it ends up being very not fulfilling or unfulfilling because the intention wasn't ever really altruistic.
And that can explain why we end up in a job or with a partner that we think we were meant to be with at the beginning, and then we find out, I'm not happy here. So you're describing one of the ways that we get into that mess.
Absolutely.
And then we might blame them instead of looking at ourselves and going,
I have low self-esteem.
Yes.
I wanted these things to look like I was doing well and coping well with life, and none of it has actually made me happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, back to you.
The next one with high self-esteem people is that high self-esteem people are willing to make a mistake. They don't have a fear of being judged by other people, and they don't judge themselves harshly for the mistake. They see it as necessary in a process, and that it is, in fact, part of a process. They expect mistakes.
Okay, I'm going to just make a slight tweak. I don't necessarily think that they're not afraid of making mistakes. I think it's human nature to still have a fear. I think it's human nature to still think about the fact that someone might judge me if and when I make a mistake, but they're able to get over it. They're able to zoom out and see the big picture that, like you said, it is a necessary process.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that says more about the other person than it says about me when I'm in there learning and figuring out how to do better next time. So I don't think it's an absence of fear when it comes to high self-esteem. I think it's just I know what needs to get done, and I'm willing to make the mistakes along the way to learn, even if other people, can't necessarily gather themselves and be mature enough around me.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
Low self-esteem, terrified of mistakes. They think their mistakes define them. They're afraid that they'll never be able to escape them in terms of how they're defined or perceived. There's a drive perhaps for perfection or perfection paralysis, right? Where if I can't do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all. I'll gather more information until I know how to do it. Like we can be stopped by the belief that mistakes shouldn't be made. Or can't be made, or that someone who is truly successful doesn't make them. There's a whole belief system in there.
That's an awesome one that you said, where you have low self-esteem can mean that you believe others never make mistakes.
Which just is crazy talk. But that's where the low self-esteem voice comes in.
So back to me, high self-esteem people tend to be more open and more honest because we believe that our thoughts have value and that we are willing to share that value with another person and not fear that judgment. So we have this tendency to wanting to be open and honest about something.
Which also means that you're engaging,
Yes.
right? And I think that's a really interesting kind of addition to it. Open and honest doesn't mean that you're talking to a wall, being open and honest about what you're experiencing. You're talking to a person about it, right? So there's a willingness to engage with others, to want to receive feedback too. And with low self-esteem, we don't want to be open and honest. We want to be closed. We want to maybe be a little bit secretive, not because that's who we want to be, but because we're not sure of what to share. We're not sure of what's going to be judged. We're not going to be sure how we're going to be perceived or what the outcome is going to be. And so there's this idea that we need to do things by ourselves. There's this idea of being isolated, which is the opposite of engagement.
Yeah. So our last one then. So high self-esteem people tend to socialize more often because they're more comfortable with themselves. And they tend to socialize and want to be around other people with higher self-esteem as well.
Cool. And this is not an introvert extrovert debate, right?
No.
This is just that there's more of an openness to socialize. There's more of a willingness to socialize. With low self-esteem people, that can be something that they want to pull away from because they don't really want to be seen. They're afraid of being seen for what they feel, what they think. And so socializing is very scary in that sense. Or if they are socializing, they're choosing people at a lower, I'll say, bar of healthy behaviors, right? Because you're choosing people that are going to collude that reality of fostering the low self-esteem, keeping you at that low self-esteem. So you might be with people who talk about other people rather than amazing ideas, right? Or the goals that you want to achieve if we circle back to the first point. So socialization looks very different and the desire for it is very different.
Yes. So that's going to wrap up our second show. And I can hardly wait to see them for the third.